Hello. Welcome
This
to Teachers
is
Talk
Teachers
Radio.
Talk Radio,
With me, Carl
and
Smith, on
you
the
are
Friday morning
listening
break show.
live.
This morning we'll be going to have a discussion about the whole question of well-being policies with the title Ditch the Donuts with Hannah Carter.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
So, fancy a donut, anyone? Now, I like a donut.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development.
Sorry there, we had an early word from our advertisers. I do apologise for that. We'll go straight on now to the show itself. So, fancy a donut, anyone? Now, I like a donut as much as the next man, but what if it was given to me as part of a reward for working so hard? As part of some kind of school well-being policy? Would it make me feel well? I'm not so sure. Perhaps I would prefer a session of compulsory yoga, because there's nothing like a bit of downward dog to make you feel better at the end of a long week, is there? Or even a compulsory after-school well-being workshop. These are some of the many things that really happen in schools and have been introduced as part of their well-being policies, because now, of course, they have to have one. Now, the cynic in me says that this all might be a bit missing the point. I mean, in fact, it might even be counterproductive to the point. Forcing staff to do things that they don't want to do just because someone else can say they've done something about well-being. In other words, tokenism. School well-being policies are everywhere. No self-respecting school or trust would be without one. But the evidence suggests that they aren't doing much good. If they were, why are teachers streaming out of the profession faster than you can say Warrior 2? If it is in fact the case that well-being policies are just, well, rubbish. To find out, I'd like to welcome our guest today, Hannah Carter, aka the Honest Educator. Hello, Hannah.
Hi, Carl. Can you hear me?
I can hear you well, yes. I've not seen you joining the show via our Podbeam. I'm not sure why, but we can hear you loud and clear, so we're all good. Okay, so...
Carry on like this.
Yeah, we will do for now. So, Hannah, what's wrong with donuts?
Well, you said it in your intro. I think they're quite offensive, actually. Not as a baked good per se, but
No.
as recognition for everything that a teacher or a member of staff in a school does. I think that well-being acts like that could be badged well-being don't really do much for anybody's well-being.
Mm.
You know, if I wanted a donut, I'd purchase one myself. I'm an adult. I think that you know, there's a lot more to well-being, and I think that school well-being policies. I mean, let me ask you, if you actually think about it, what's the point of a policy? Like, what policies for? They're for implementing systems and processes. Can you improve well-being with a system or a process? Like, isn't well-being inherently personal and subjective? Isn't that sort of the nature of well-being?
Absolutely. I mean, first thing is, you know, a policy sounds like something that's a statement of law almost, or within the context of a school law, and it's an outward-facing document which is proving to an external audience that you are doing something, and there's an official process for doing something. Don't feel very much like what a culture of well-being should be about.
No, and I think a policy is only worth the kind of the person that's implementing it. And I think it relies so heavily, staff wellbeing in schools relies so heavily on the ability of the leadership of the school to actually impact on people's well-being and to actually, in good faith, proactively make staff feel valued, make staff feel welcome, make staff feel like their contribution matters. You know, no one goes into teaching for the glamour or the money or the donuts.
No, they definitely don't go for the donuts, that's for sure. Yeah.
If you really strip it back, you know, I think that perhaps schools have lost their way a bit and forgotten the things that as teachers we know. So, you know, I don't know, think about children in a classroom. What do they respond the most to? Is it dojos? Is it stickers? Is it points? It isn't. It's a teacher telling them, looking in them in the eye and telling them what they've done well.
Yeah.
And, you know, that I think we forget adults have the same needs and the mechanisms for praising and rewarding adults should be similar to those that we inherently know are successful with children.
Yeah.
You know, we're all people. And I've got a particular teacher in mind.
Oh, right.
And I'm sure he'll hate this. Called Jim, who is... the school we worked at used to run reports for how many teachers had given like positive points and how many teachers had given negative points, and he came out as like the bottom for giving any points of any kind at all or any positive points on the like school reward system where they add up to like a ruler that you can buy every 6 months if you go to all your lessons. And but he was the most loved, respected teacher, Jim, in the school. And that was because, and I saw him teach a number of times and, you know, was in and out of his lessons. And that's because he was genuine and his praise was in the form of genuine recognition that was specific and personal. Yes, he wasn't putting 5 points for respect on the board, but he was getting down to kids' levels and saying, do you know what, I can see that you worked really hard on this and it's excellent, like you've done X, Y, Z and it's really good, and you know, I'm going to give your mum a call. Like it. And I always think, you know, maybe school policies could be a bit more Jim, you know.
Yeah.
Bit more about the staff and a bit less about the person writing the policy.
Yeah, being a bit more Jim. Jim sounds like a great fella, by the way. Whoever you are, Jim, just a shout out for you there. Well done.
He doesn't need it, his ego.
No, well, maybe not, but it seems to me at least like we need to build our well-being, our thinking about well-being. I'll rephrase that. We need to build our thinking about well-being around. Hannah, you still there? Hannah, hello. Sorry, Hannah, have I got you still? I do beg your pardon, Hannah. We lost touch with one another at that point. No, I don't think it was the censors. I think the donut companies might have tried to intervene and
intervening.
Yeah, and I think we ought to make it clear at this stage that actually donuts are fine. You know, it's fine to have donuts. It's just that we suggest tentatively that there might not be the basis of our school wellbeing policy. But back to Jim. You were saying about the sincerity, the authenticity of Jim, and I think that is absolutely resonant with me and probably everybody that works in schools and education. That actually anything which is in a policy is official, and you know, if getting official sort of well-being statement sounds like it isn't authentic.
Same as like staff member of the week. You know,
God!
Wine in front of the whole staff, not wine actually nowadays because obviously no alcohol policy. A bottle of chocolates in front of the whole staff member of the week. And you can see the leadership team have just scrabbled at the last minute and worked out who to make eye contact. Like it's never specific, it's never based on, I would much rather someone came up to me face to face, one to one and said, thank you so much for intervening earlier with that lad. That really helped diffuse the situation, and I, you know, it really helped me say for the class, thanks for popping in and getting involved. You know, face to face, a specific recognition of what you've done. Then someone waving a box of chocolates at me in a library while everyone looks at the clock and thinks, "Oh God, I've got to get to lessons." Like,
right. Yeah, I mean, totally. In fact, I would go a little bit further, Hannah. I think those things can be counterproductive because not only does it sometimes feel a little bit uncomfortable for the person, but also you can guarantee that if somebody's made staff member of the week, or, you know, here's a shout out to person X, Y, and Z, you can guarantee that 10 other people working in the organisation will be saying to themselves, hang on a minute, I did this, I did that, why aren't I getting any thanks? So you can't win with that one, and you actually create resentment, and by creating resentment, people don't feel well. So you know, in the end, I think those well-meaning as they might be, I don't think those sort of strategies work. So should we just ditch the well-being policy altogether?
So I think about this last night. I think there are a few things that I think if the well-being policy had a shift of focus and was about some specific, entrenched, systematic things that we know support well-being, like that are empirically, you know, that are evidence-based and proven, that would be far more effective on top of personalised, you know, gratitude, and on top of, you know, a leadership team that recognises, and a head that has a vision that includes everyone's contribution. You know, all of those things, the soft skills, the important stuff that basically can make or break a school, whether your head teacher's an idiot or not, essentially, or a good person. I think there are a couple of things, because there's two things in there. One, how do you hold people accountable or measure well-being? Like, if you're going to have a policy, you have to have accountability in it, right? Yeah. And if you've got accountability in it, who are you measuring and how are you holding people to account? And then second of all, you know, there are probably a very, very few things, and I'd say one of them would be, so something that I introduced in a school that I worked in was the PPA off-site, which was much easier in a secondary school, but every member of staff had either a period 1 or a period 5, and they got to pick in the 2-week cycle where they had PPA, and that they could take that off-site, so they could either come in late or go home early, 1 day every 2 weeks. And actually, for staff, that was huge. That was really significant. That I know for a fact had a really positive impact on their well-being, because it meant that they could, you know, pick their kids up from school once every 2 weeks, or go to the gym in the morning, or go to Waitrose and get their avocado before everyone's already squished it. Like, you know, whatever it is that is personal to them, you know, they could. Time is a gift, isn't it? But having that type of thing entrenched in policy is important, because it's a system and a process. And if it's not there, then it can be violated, can't it? And it can be changed, and people can go, oh yeah, but we're short at the moment. You know, we need to protect teachers' rights in that sense. So it being in a policy is important. And I was trying to think of some other sort of concrete things that would be policy appropriate. I mean, the thing I hate the most of any sort of group well-being, I mean, oh gosh, activities.
They're horrific, aren't they?
We had a well-being day, and part of it involved going to the library, being read to by the head of English.
Oh my!
Like an actual
oh my God! That absolutely sounds like a dreadful experience.
So imagine, like, knowing that you've got like year 9 papers to mark, you've got X, Y, Z, and you're listening to Dickens being softly. I mean, lovely dulcet tones of the head of English, but like story time. And people be like, also part of it was being made to go for a walk.
Oh, what? I mean, are we treating the staff like they're kind of, you know, year 1 or something?
Yeah, and I think it's something that very important. Everybody knows that staff that work in schools are time in the day. And we're always scrabbling to make sure we do the best for the kids, and there's, you know, a million pressures. And I don't think that taking up people's time with activities and telling them it's for their own good does anything other than foster resentment. And if anything, it's like the anti-well-being, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the second thing is this measuring it. Like, I started at a school and I was given like a survey results. I started at the head of the school, that were like, staff well-being has increased by 27% last term. And I was like, how on earth? How?
Yeah.
Like, what's the metrics? Like, you wouldn't say, student attendance has increased by 27% without actually knowing that it had. Like, what, people click 1 to 5 on what? It's so like, I don't know. Am I missing something? Is there like a national well-being measure that I don't know about? But like,
well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I checked on, the DFE have a staff wellbeing charter that you can sign up to, and there's a little bit in there saying, and you can measure it as well. And I'm thinking, but that's ridiculous. I mean, measuring something like that is like, pinning jelly to the wall. You never get it pinned down properly. And secondly, what's the purpose of that? Are we then saying that somehow we're able to then, it's about proving, isn't it? It's about proving it. And so Ofsted's been in the news this week, Hannah. What do you think about Ofsted coming in and saying, we're gonna measure the effectiveness of your school wellbeing policy? How do you think that works?
Well, exactly. Like, literally, how does that work? Like, based on what? And analyse staff absence data, staff turnover. Is it in quantitative, qualitative? Like, what would be? How would you possibly, like you said, how would one possibly measure well-being? Like, how many try and high five people if they come in, and how many return the high five? Like, I sound like I'm being glib, but like, it isn't something that's tangible. Like, it's something that's cultural, and I think we've become so obsessed in schools with measuring everything. Everything's got a metric. Everything's got to be proven. What about culture? What about a feeling? What about a sense of a place? What about kind of an emotionally intelligent observation of interactions between people? And then, second of all, if that is really going to go down, and you're going to go, okay, an emotionally intelligent check on culture, but we trust Ofsted inspectors to do that? I mean, one of my best friends is one, and
Hannah, you're just breaking up a little bit. If you can just get a bit close to the phone. Yeah.
Can you hear me? I was distracted.
You're all right. No, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think I do that. You can't trust Ofsted inspectors to all have the same ability to emotionally judge the temperature or climate of a culture. Like, that's not within their gift.
No.
Or their training, I'm sure. Like, again, it's exactly like the head teacher thing. Wellbeing policy is only as good as the head teacher that is driving it. And Ofsted is the same, isn't it? It's a set of hoops that are only as good as the inspector that is holding them. And it's just yet another layer. I just think schools have become obsessed with measuring absolutely everything. Like, isn't it enough that we measure and prod and poke and, children constantly, also to next to the adults? I mean, progress isn't linear, is it? Like everyone knows.
No, it absolutely isn't. And I mean, I think when it comes to something like Ofsted, where it is plainly obvious that the people that are there to make a judgment, and that the stakes are there, that they're high. So that the implications of making a negative judgment are not great. So it's rather disingenuous to then be at the same time as you're creating a huge amount of pressure and stress on somebody to then be saying, and what are you doing to make sure that you don't do what we're doing to everybody else in your organisation? And of course,
sorry, you say.
No, you go ahead.
I was thinking about this. I was thinking about, it's really funny. So I was thinking about, so I've been head teacher of 2 schools and been kind of working in senior leadership for sort of 15-ish years.
Yeah.
Across a variety of the private schools. And the kids, the context that I've worked in, high pupil premium, challenging, coastal, there's a lot of behaviour stuff there. And I think there's a lot that in the news, and there's a lot at the moment about how teachers are leaving because behaviour is out of control, children X, Y, Z, and there's a lot of kind of blame being placed on children. And in my entire career, only once have I ever had an adult in front of me, a member of staff, genuinely, upset about a child. Every other adult I've dealt with is being negatively impacted upon. It's been because of other adults.
Yeah.
It's not been the children. Do you know what I mean? It's not been the children.
No.
Like, inset days are the days where people are most upset.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly don't think I think that's such an easy cop-out, isn't it? Like, kids are worse behaved since the pandemic, so that's why teachers are leaving. Parents aren't supportive. Behaviour's a nightmare. Like, it's a really easy cop-out without actually, like, looking inward and going, is it though? Like, where's the evidence that that's why? Why is the evidence that teachers are burnt out and their well-being is negatively impacted because kids are naughty?
Wow.
Like, I don't think it's there. I can't find it. Can you?
Very difficult. Hang on to that thought, Hannah. We're just going to go hear a word from our sponsors and then catch the education news, and then we're going to carry on this and find out a little bit more about what you think could work to improve teacher well-being if in fact we perceive, or everybody perceives, there's a bit of an issue here. So I'll see you after the break.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Meet USA Study, your one-stop platform for guiding students through their college application journey. Access up-to-date resources on universities, programs, scholarships, and application requirements, all in one place. Get easy-to-access tools, personalised timelines, expert tips, application templates, and exclusive webinars with admissions officers to help your student stand out. Visit usastudy.co.uk or call Phil at 0800 612 8271 because every student deserves the opportunity to shine with USA Study.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
A Schools Week exclusive reveals that a multi-million-pound legal fight has been launched by one of the biggest school management information system providers against a leading rival. 2 years ago, United Learning Trust lost a High Court battle with tech company Bromcom, after a judge ruled Bromcom should have won a £2 million MIS contract with the academy chain. Bromcom has told rival Arbor Education, which secured the deal, to pay £4 million, accusing it of making material misrepresentations over its finances that prevented it from being automatically disqualified during the procurement process. Arbor denied the allegations, saying schools should not have to fear being sued by their software supplier. Ministers handed United Learning £1 million to challenge Bromcom in what Schools Week calls a bid to protect the wider academy sector. In court documents, Bromcom claimed Arbor would have either ceased to trade or not been able to secure 26 subsequent contracts across 543 schools if it did not win the UL contract. Bromcom says it would have secured all or some of these deals, the basis of the claim, and that Arbor's actions unfairly disadvantaged Bromcom and undermined the principles of fair competition. The case comes around what Schools Week calls seismic change to the MIS world. The market share for Sims, long a sector dominator, has shrunk, falling 44% last year. Arbor's share stood at 30% and Bromcom's at 11%. It's not the first legal battle raised by Bromcom, as 11 years ago they took action against two councils, and in September, Lift Schools settled its legal battle with them. That dispute centred on the chain's decision to award a £2 million contract to Arbor. The Guardian features research which identifies poverty and SEND as the key influences on individual children's school exclusions and attainment, rather than race. The findings by a multi-ethnic team of academics from Durham and Birmingham universities challenge some views that children in some ethnic groups are disproportionately affected by exclusions and suspensions. However, the article also features responses from race and equality campaigners who argue that the research downplays the complex intersection of ethnicity and class that deprives many children of fair access to educational opportunities. The research found that once adjusted by free school meal eligibility or SEND status, there were no significant differences between ethnic groups in rates of exclusion or academic attainment at primary or secondary schools in England. The research used official records from the Department for Education for 2019 and was published in the journal Education Sciences. Full details of the Guardian article, as well as reported comment from campaigners, union representatives and the researchers themselves, can be found online. BBC Wales focuses on a story affecting many higher education institutes, with its coverage of plans to cut 400 full-time jobs at Cardiff University. The cost-cutting proposals could also involve course closures and department merges, with nursing, music and modern languages among subjects facing cuts. The Cardiff University and College Union called the measures cruel and unnecessary and said it would fight compulsory redundancies. The University Vice-Chancellor has defended the decision to cut jobs, saying the drastic action was needed to avoid the university becoming untenable. She said the job role cuts were only a proposal, but insisted that the university needed to make different decisions due to declining international student numbers and increasing costs. A Welsh Government spokesperson said they were very disappointed nursing courses were part of the proposals, but that universities across the UK are facing a challenging financial period. The plans will remain in consultation for 3 months, with final plans for approval expected to be considered in June. Full details can be found on BBC Wales News Online. Finally, the BBC's education reporters cover a report from the Children's Commissioner for England, which says young people who took part in last summer's riot did it in the thrill of the moment. Dame Rachel D'Souza told BBC Radio 5 Live that judges should have the power to wipe criminal records clean where youths had done their time for some very silly things. She said interviews with children charged over the riots painted a more complex picture of why they became involved. Dame Rachel also told BBC Breakfast that children turned up to riots having been egged on by adults who were extremists. Many of the children she said she'd spoken to had ADHD and felt they had acted impulsively and then regretted what they had done. The report said at least 140 children had been arrested and 84 charged, with some as young as 12 being sentenced. Dame Rachel states that her report does not excuse criminality, but that her duty is to listen to children. Full details of Dame Rachel's comments can be found on BBC News websites, and the report can be found on the childrenscommissioner.gov.uk website. This has been Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
Okay, and welcome back, Hannah.
Hello, I'm still here.
Good to hear you. So I think we've established that we're a little bit cynical about school well-being policies. So given that cynicism, What would actually make staff well if it wasn't for a well-being policy?
Right, I'm thinking about that over the news. So I think I'm going to put out there 3 suggestions.
Okay.
So the first one is that I think that staff well-being is often impacted by the fact that being a teacher is all-consuming, and that a lot happens within, it's one of the very few jobs where you're tied to a place for a specific amount of time, and there's no flexibility around that because obviously you need to be with the children. But I think if you yourself are a parent, or a carer, or have a child in your life in some capacity, that then becomes a real sense of tension. Yes, you're off with them in the holidays, but there are important milestones and things that improve people's well-being that are about, your child's first nativity play and sports day and your own child's parents' evening and all of the, or your niece's graduation, all of the things that happen within the school system that you miss out on because you're also in the system. And I think there needs to be, I think there needs to be more freedom and leeway within schools for staff to have that time, to take that time in to do that. That's often seen as, I think there's quite a lot of shaming that goes on in schools, quite a lot, around people taking time to do things that matter to them. And I think actually if that's promoted instead, you create much more of a team culture. I know I'm not saying this from a naive perspective, I've run schools, I know there are cost and time and logistical issues and barriers to that. But if you're actually committed to it, it's totally doable. And people will pull together, people will cover each other. So a school that I led, I had a married couple on the staff, and their daughter had made it through to competing at a national level in sport. And they'd been told that only one of them could go.
Oh, right.
And I think that's really common. I talked to a head of PE who said that he'd never been to his child's own sports day. Because you can't take that time off.
No.
You're not ill. So, and, people that have been invited to be best man at a wedding in Ireland, and they need the Friday to travel over, that have had to say to people, no, I can't be your best man. I think that thinking about staff time really, really carefully and how you allow them to have lives that balance with being a teacher would do a huge amount for well-being. That's real, that's significant, and that acknowledges that you acknowledge that they're people. And they're more than just, a member of staff that does X. And that should be for all staff. I don't just mean teaching staff. And then I guess, second of all, I think...
Well, just before we go on to that second one, Hannah, because I think that you've made a really powerful point, and I think it is so important to just emphasise this to listeners. And, by the way, if any listeners want to, add their own comments about wellbeing policies or their own examples of things that either haven't worked well or worked well, then that would be great. So please do that. But yeah, I just wanted to latch onto that for a second, if I may, because it's something I believe is extremely important. And it's sometimes presented as flexible working. And I think there's a certain misunderstanding. It's not so much flexible employment in the sense that, schools are schools. If the kids are there, you kind of have to be there. You can't do it. You can't work from home in the same way. But what you can do is, if you've got a head that listens and is genuinely wanting to kind of be flexible with staff needs, is that you basically will agree to those requests 99% of the time. Part of the deal is, if there's a major crisis, if you've got half the staff out because of a infectious disease, or you're in a very, very tight spot, then you would kind of have to pull rank and say, look, guys, here at the moment we're in a tough spot. But otherwise, and that rarely is the case, otherwise what you're saying is, look, we'll do this for each other because actually we all benefit. And it is, I think the other thing is it's resources, because sometimes, if a number of people are off and people are watching their supply budget going through the roof and all this kind of thing, as well as the reaction of the kids if people are off and, they never like being taught by somebody that they don't know or not their regular teacher and all that sort of thing. But if everybody is investing in and making that happen, so you have proper cover teachers, which are, employed by the school, that are there full time by the school, so that then, that they're familiar faces in front of classes. So you're not in a situation where somebody's being pulled in, at the last minute or something. Those kind of things make that culture possible. And there's so much goodwill that is engendered by it. And I think that on its own goes a long way toward creating better well-being.
But people also pay it back. The point is that if you invest in the culture, you talk about cover. I'm not suggesting that in order for someone to watch their child's school play, you should pay a cover, pay a supply teacher. But people will offer to cover for each other.
Yeah, they will.
They will, and it becomes part of the cultural norm that actually we're a team, and that has to be head teacher to reception staff to everyone. We're a team. Yeah. Someone needs something, we sort it out, in house, because we're that's how we play. I love rugby, so I was going to go for doing a hacker, but do you know what I mean? We're aligned. We're pushing forward together, and if there's a break in it, that's when it doesn't work. And I think people totally buy in. Teaching is one of those professions where you can pretty much guarantee most people that do it are decent. Do you know what I mean? They're not.
Absolutely.
They should have chosen they would have chosen a different career if they weren't. If they didn't care about social justice, and they didn't care about equity, and they didn't care about rising others up, and teaching and schools attract people that are sort of team players and generally socially quite morally decent.
I would say as a general rule, that's absolutely true. Yeah,
it's not an investment bank. It's not like everyone's out for themselves.
No.
Or that everyone's getting bonuses and competing. And so it's really easy to do in a school. People like being nice, and people like being liked.
Yeah.
And I think people get a lot out of reciprocal kindness.
Yeah.
Again, it's not only the person being covered. Actually, doing a favour for someone and knowing that you've helped with their well-being increases your well-being. And this leads me to point 2, right?
Yes, please, go on to point 2, yeah.
All of this is only possible if the leadership of a school have the emotional intelligence and the skill necessary to do this. And I think that, I have a real problem with leadership in schools anyway, because I think that often staff are promoted for being good teachers rather than being good leaders, and the two aren't linked. Just because I'm great at delivering geography and getting great GCSE outcomes does not mean I have the skills required to lead and manage people.
Absolutely.
They're totally different things. And I think that so often leadership teams end up being filled with people that were brilliant in the classroom that are then taken out of the classroom and stuck with a responsibility that they don't know, and they're not a specialist in. They don't know anything about, why on earth would a good PE teacher know anything about attendance? The two are so all of that only works if school leaders are good leaders. And I think that, I haven't done the MPQH, I'm not going to lie. And I haven't done, ambition, instinct, all of the kind of, I haven't done any of those things because I'm a terrible participant.
Well, you're participating in this show very well. But yeah.
I'm a fidgeter and a doodler, and also I'm too honest for that. But I think that leadership and leadership of schools, there needs to be actual training in leadership. Like, if people are going to be school leaders, they need to actually be qualified, trained leaders, not just good teachers that have stuck it out. Because so many schools, I know so many schools are led by people that are just totally lacking in the skills needed to lead a large team of people.
Yeah.
You know, you need to be able to. You need to be empathic, you need to be a good listener, you need to be able to be strategic whilst also being operational. Like, there's so many things that no one teaches you that I'm pretty sure aren't on the NPQH. I haven't done it, but I don't think there's a unit called Be a Good Person.
No.
But I think, you know, I just think we underestimate how quality leadership can make or break a school. And well-being is part of that. If the leader and the leadership are genuinely committed to people and their staff and their culture, then well-being will happen. But if they're not, then it won't, and a policy won't make any difference, and you'll just end up back with your donut.
And so, sometimes, actually, the more, shall we say, the less the leadership is tuned into this stuff, the more the policies become prominent. And actually, sometimes when it comes to accountability, they then get lots of praise for, oh yes, they do this, that, and the other, and their policies are great. But actually, the reality is that they're nothing of the sort. And all those things are, and that happens so often in schools. Listen, Hannah, I've just got to.
People work for people.
People do work for people.
For anything else, do they?
Yeah.
And you know, it's got to be the right person. And
absolutely.
I think, you know, I would say probably, I don't know, you've probably met more head teachers than me. What do you reckon if you had to put a percent on how many of them are people that people want to work for?
Well, that would be it would be somewhat controversial stab in the dark to say that. So I really wouldn't want to say. I'd like to think that people would say that I was somebody that they felt they could, you know, be okay with working with. I'd like to think that, but well, who knows? What we're going to do, Hannah, just for a second, is we just have to go back and have another word from our sponsors, and then we're going to rejoin this and see if we can figure it all out. Okay, so just
maybe you can pull someone in and ask them if they like you.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. See you in a minute. Bye.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Meet USA Study, your one-stop platform for guiding students through their college application journey. Access up-to-date resources on universities, programs, scholarships, and application requirements, all in one place. Get easy-to-access tools, personalised timelines, expert tips, application templates, and exclusive webinars with admissions officers to help your student stand out. Visit usastudy.co.uk or call Phil at 0800 612 8271 because every student deserves the opportunity to shine with USA Study.
Okay, Hannah, welcome back. Hi, yeah. So, when you're talking about likability, of course, there's a way of thinking about likability. I mean, it's a bit like a teacher in that way, isn't it? You ask kids, what kind of teacher do you want? They tend to say somebody that they like, but they often also say somebody that actually has the respect of the students or the pupils in the class, and is somebody that is fair but firm with people who would otherwise mess things up a bit for the class. So is there a sense in which a school leader, it's not about, you know, kind of being Miss or Mr. Popular in that literal sense of trying to court popularity, but being somebody that's sincere and genuine and compassionate?
Yeah, and that's what I mean by likability. People don't like people that are, I'm going to borrow from teenagers, they don't like pick-me's.
No.
Like, it's not about going around and telling everyone that they're wonderful and never holding anyone to account.
Yeah.
But it's about authenticity, and it's about people believing in you. And, you know, people always, something that, one of the best pieces of feedback I ever had from a member of staff was that I might not always agree with you, but I always agree with why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, they fundamentally agreed with my values and believed in the authenticity of my commitment to children. And so actually, whilst I don't always agree with the nitty-gritty, fundamentally they respect what drives it. And I think being a school leader is, I also think my third thing, like, kind of leads on to the third thing.
Yes, go on to the third thing.
Can be really easy as a school leader to see, because you're so bogged down with the bigger picture and the strategy and the Ofsted and the accountability and your MAT and how much money they're taking or not taking, and you know, it's really easy to forget that the small things, like small things, matter to people.
Yeah.
And what matters to someone doesn't necessarily matter to you, but it's still important. And I think, you know, it's about not diminishing people's needs in a way. So it's about, you know, you can't always solve it. And I'm not suggesting, I've got a book coming out, but I'm not going to talk about it.
No.
But it's about being ahead. In it is about, you know, I'm not suggesting that when someone knocks on your door and says their clock's batteries have run out, that you nip to Tesco's and buy the batteries and come back and fix their clock.
No.
But it's about actually acknowledging that that's really annoying if you've got a clock in your room that's not keeping you time. Like, that matters to that person, whether it matters in the grand scheme of the things that you think you're dealing with. I've worked for so many leaders that diminish people and people's needs, and those needs are what makes well-being, you know, the parking at your school and the state of the staff toilets and someone that's been given a 5-period day and then a break duty outdoors. Like, all of those things that you don't see because you're busy writing, you know, a raising standards plan as to how on earth you can get 20 more kids to get a grade 4 in English.
Yeah.
Those little things, unless you deliberately tune into them and you deliberately make them your business, you can become so detached from them that you can't impact well-being.
Yeah.
Like, and my advice is to take an hour every single week as the head and pick a member of staff and literally walk their day.
Yeah.
Like, think your way through, right? So I'm a site member. Like, where do I park? Where do I eat my lunch? When I'm the pinch points, what's expected of me?
Yeah.
Where do I keep? Is my equipment 2 floors away from where my ex is? And do I then is that a real pain and it takes me 20 minutes a day and actually I've got a bad back? You know, all the actual lived experiences of the people in your building. As the head, they're your responsibility. Like, as much as the children are. And I think heads can sometimes detach themselves from that and forget that they're leading people, like actual people. And that's well-being, right? Like, feeling like someone hears you and sees you and knows, even if it's just to acknowledge that it's a pain.
Yeah. Even
if it's just to go, do you know what? I know that you've put in 8 requests to the IT team to have your mouth fixed and it still hasn't happened. I'm sorry, that must be a real pain in the butt. Like, that in and of itself is sufficient.
Yeah.
Like, to recognise it. And I think it can be really easy, can't it, as school leaders to forget that.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's not that people necessarily want you to solve everything or resolve everything, because people understand, you know, there are some things that can't be solved. There are some things that are beyond your capacity to solve, but at least
the
being...
IT team and why they hate everyone and they won't just do the things they need.
No. Well, sometimes, I mean, I used to, you know, before I became a head, I was a deputy, and one of the things was I did the timetable. And one of the best pieces of advice early on that you know, I was timetabling was what you need to do is go through with people the process by which they found themselves having to teach period 6 on a Friday. So why that's happened and explain to it, rather than, because if they don't know the process, they can only think or assume that somehow, they've been given the short straw and somebody else is, and it's to not understand that actually it's because we couldn't fit it in because so-and-so's part-time and all that sort of thing. And then make it transparent so people then see how it the problem appears to you. Can I ask you something, Hannah, which is particularly controversial? And that is, we talk about the importance of the leaders and the leader in particular, and how they are in touch with and aware of the way that school life is experienced by staff on the ground. So, can I mention multi-academy trusts? Is it, dare I say, the fact that a lack of well-being is being partly, other factors we've clearly already identified, partly driven by the fact that there are now so many schools in multi-academy trusts, and the layers of accountability that go up to a big trust board that comprises of people who probably don't know the staff and the school, particularly that they're working with very well, set as a concept in terms of numbers on charts and things. So is that distance, that gap between the people managing and the people actually doing the job, increasing the problem, do you think?
Trying to get me sued. What do I think? No.
You don't? Okay. Can you elaborate? Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I mean, I don't know. There's loads of problems with maths, aren't there? And I'm not going to get into them, but I don't, because I think that's the head teacher's job, to manage both, like to manage up and down. That's the reality of being a school leader nowadays. Like, being a head now isn't what being a head was 10 years ago. It just isn't. It's a whole different job. Like, and people have to be prepared for that job and the right people to do it, because it does involve managing a map. Like, that's life. That's the future. There'll be a director of secondary. There'll be executive principals. There'll be school improvement teams. There'll be wellbeing champions. Like, all of those things are now so baked into the system that unless there's some kind of revolution, which I'm totally down for, it is what it is. Do you know what I mean? That is the system. Ofsted exists. All of this exists, and being outraged and angry about it will only get you more angry and actually negatively impact on your well-being. So I think that, that's part of the head's job, is to manage both and to keep that at bay. And I've seen so many heads that blame up because it's the easy way out, like you talked about with the timetable. And kids, rather than actually explaining why, it's easy to go, oh, the decision was taken by someone above me. Like, it's so easy to blame, like, oh, that was the trust. And it's a cop out, because actually either the trust made a bad call and you as the head actually put your neck on the line and advocated against it, or you didn't. And if you didn't choose to, then own it. Like, it's your mess. Like, I don't know, I think in an ideal world, politically, I guess, in an ideal world, maths wouldn't be where they're at in terms of the layers of, but they are. That is the reality of now, and there are kids and adults in school now, this day, going up to 3 o'clock, that need to be looked after, and fundamentally, that's the head teacher. That's what they get paid to do. So they've got to do it within the system they're in. I think personally, but
the reason why I asked the question, Hannah, is because I do think that there is a problem for school leaders that have a diminished amount of agency themselves, in that what they then would normally have done if they were the proper head of the school genuinely making all the decisions about how things and systems worked, is that they could then more quickly respond to the fact that on the ground people were saying, well, actually that doesn't work here, or that's not the way that it's actually feeling to us. Whereas if you are having to accept systems that have been created by other people and having to then follow them, well, no, you are required to apply them, it means that you have less latitude for flexibility.
Yeah.
And the flexibility is what we're saying create people, that leaders that people want to work for.
So I guess I would counter that by saying you're working for the wrong map then.
Well, possibly, yes, possibly.
You know what I mean? Like, you need to leave. If you're in an organisation that doesn't give you the flexibility or autonomy to successfully deliver your job in the way that you want to do it, you've got to quit.
Well, quite a few people are. It has to be said.
Yeah.
So
me included.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, everybody's got their own story, and there all sorts of different things go into each one. But as a commonality, a lot of people are making those decisions, and that's a major problem because, as we know, we have nowhere near enough people who are staying in the profession, nowhere near enough people wanting to take leadership roles, and that is not a good situation, and that's something we obviously have to turn around if we're going to get to a better place. So, Hannah, you talked about...
Are you tempting me into your revolution, Carl?
Well, who knows? I mean...
Are you proposing one?
Well, I sort of would quite like a revolution, yes.
I'm here for it. You got me.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, my influence is rather limited, so I have a feeling that I'm struggling. What was it? Oasis start a revolution from a bed. Could be tricky, but I'll give it a go.
Always a seed that starts it. I've got your back.
Right, sounds good to me. Sounds like a good place to start. But what I would say, Hannah, is that you have given us 3 really good ideas for genuinely developing well-being, and it would be nice if you're just able to remind us all of what they were, so our takeaways can be those 3 things. So hit me with them again.
So such a teacher is this the plenary? Okay, here's my exit ticket.
Yeah.
So, number 1, genuinely valuing staff time and being flexible to enable staff to be both effective teachers and effective people.
Yeah.
Second of all, genuine feedback and gratitude that's personalised, that's focused on the individual and that celebrates the things that they've done well. So a bit more gym. So second of all, bit more gym. He's gonna dine out on this forever. And then third would be that school leaders need to A, sweat the small stuff, and B, in leadership, like being a leader and what that actually means, because so many of them are ill-equipped to do the job.
Yeah.
And I guess the final thing is join Carl's revolution.
Join my revolution. I would definitely agree with that as a final grand strategy.
Carl's taking them down. He's taking down the match.
Absolutely. Well, no. I mean, it's not. I mean, there are good mats.
You're going to get sacked.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I mean, there are good mats. There are bad mats. There are good schools. There are bad schools. There are good heads. There are rotten heads. There are good teachers and there are not so good. So in a sense, it's not so much the structure per se; it's the people and whether those people are the right people for it. And
100%.
Yeah, and that I think is but one thing I think I hear loud and clear from what you're saying is that things are not where they should be, and people are very much feeling that. And the more that we put well-being policies down in our, on our website or whatever, the more actually that's evidence that things are not right.
Yeah, people should just be nice. Have they considered that?
I think that's probably a fairly good place to wrap things up. today. People should be
Be
more
nice.
nice. Yeah, absolutely. And it
And
sounds
also that the children are never the problem.
no, not in the end. We can cope. This is the thing, can't we? We can cope in education with with kids. That's what we got into the job for. Cope with
They're
kids,
the joy.
providing
They're the
us
joy. They're hilarious.
absolutely. But what we can't cope with is other people from outside telling us all the time how we should be doing our jobs when actually we need to be allowed to get on and do it. That I think is probably at the number
People
of
that probably couldn't do your job in the first place. I think
well. Who knows? I don't know. But what I do know is I've really, really enjoyed our chat today. It's been absolutely great, hearing all your thoughts, which are, inspirational, I think. And I hope our listeners... No, absolutely. I hope our listeners who've joined us live, I've enjoyed it today. We've got a lot of good programs on Teachers Talk Radio going on today too. So, a big shout out to the shows that are coming later in the day. Tune in again or pick up the podcast on Podbeam or one of the other platforms. There's loads of well-known platforms, and it's been lovely. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I can only say hope your well-being is good, and I don't know about you, but I might go off and have a donut.
Go on, you go for it, Carl.
All right, I will do. All right, Hannah, you take care. Okay then. Bye-bye.